I was supposed to be at work. That was the only reason she felt secure enough to do this. The only reason she believed she wouldn't be caught. But I wasn't at work. Instead, I stood just outside my own house, gripping my keys, my stomach knotted so tightly it felt like I might be sick. My gaze was fixed on the sleek black BMW sitting in my driveway, a car that didn't belong to me. At first, I didn't even feel anger. It was something else. Disbelief. That overwhelming sensation when your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are clearly showing you. Maybe it was a friend stopping by. Maybe it was an Uber driver on break. Maybe, no. Deep down, I knew. There were no innocent explanations. Stepping forward, I barely noticed the chill in the air against my skin. The house was silent from the outside, but I could see the faint flicker of the living room lights behind the curtains. She had no idea I was here. She thought she had time. I approached the front door, carefully sliding my key into the lock and turning it as quietly as possible. When I stepped inside, my own heartbeat roared in my ears, nearly drowning out everything else. But beneath it, I caught something. Voices. Low murmurs. Hers and his. I didn't stop to think. I just moved, following the sound down the hallway. The bedroom door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar, open enough for me to see inside without them realizing. And the moment my eyes took in the scene, my entire body felt like it had shut down. Emily sat on the bed, legs crossed, leaning toward him with the kind of interest that made my chest tighten. A tall, polished man sat beside her. Well-dressed, effortlessly confident, with an expensive watch that glinted under the light. The kind of guy who walks into a room expecting the world to bow to him. Then she laughed. Not the forced, polite chuckle she gave me when I told a joke. Not the weary, distracted one I'd been hearing for months. No. This was real. A full, genuine laugh from deep in her chest, the kind that brightened her entire face. The kind I couldn't even remember the last time I had seen. I didn't realize I had pushed the door open until the laughter died. Until Emily turned and saw me standing there. And the first thing she did? She rolled her eyes. Not shock. Not guilt. Just irritation. Like I was some minor inconvenience in her evening. Oh my God, really? She sighed, swinging her legs off the bed with all the frustration of a teenager caught sneaking out. You weren't supposed to be home. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was still catching up to the fact that this was real. That it was happening in front of me. The guy didn't even look embarrassed. He just sat there, completely unbothered. Like this was nothing. Like I was the one intruding. Emily stood, casually brushing her hair back. Don't look at me like that, Jake. I blinked. That look? What is this? My voice came out quieter than I expected. She scoffed. What does it look like? And just like that, something inside me snapped. I didn't even register making the decision to move. One moment, I was frozen in the doorway, my stomach in knots. The next, I was stepping inside, closing the space between us. Not toward Emily. Toward him. He barely reacted, just tilting his head with an infuriating smirk. The kind that should have warned me this was someone who wasn't afraid of consequences. Behind me, Emily let out an exasperated sigh. Oh my God, can you not make a scene? A scene. She had the audacity to act like I was embarrassing her. Like I was interrupting her moment instead of the other way around. I ignored her. My focus was on him. Get up. He raised an eyebrow but didn't move. Relax, man. His voice was smooth. Practiced. Like he'd done this before and knew exactly how to handle it. Emily groaned. Seriously, Jake? Cut the macho act. You're being pathetic. Pathetic. That was when it truly hit me just how far gone this was. She wasn't just caught. She wasn't just guilty. She didn't care. I had spent years with this woman. Loving her. Fighting for her. Believing we were in this together. And now? She stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was some clueless fool who wouldn't take the hint and move aside. My fists clenched. I wanted to wipe that smug look off his face. I wanted to yell, to make Emily understand what she had just destroyed. But I didn't. Because this wasn't a fight I could win. Instead, I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to meet her gaze. How long? She blinked. Then, without a trace of hesitation, she shrugged. Shrugged. Like I had just asked how long she'd been on hold with customer service. I don't know. A few months. A few months. The words hit me harder than I expected. My stomach churned, my skin turned cold, and suddenly the room felt too small. Too suffocating. The guy, still seated, sighed as if this whole thing was exhausting for him. Look, man, I think we should all just... I cut him off. Shut up. He raised his hands, clearly amused. Touchy. Emily rolled her eyes again. Jake, stop being so dramatic. Dramatic. Something inside me went cold. Ice cold. I looked at her. really looked at her. And for the first time I saw her for exactly what she was. She wasn't the woman I had married. She wasn't the person I had fought for. Instead, she was just a stranger standing in our bedroom looking at me as if I didn't matter. I nodded, more to myself than to her, accepting the reality in front of me. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Emily didn't try to stop me. She didn't call my name. She didn't say anything at all. And somehow that silence was the worst part. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't recall pulling out of the driveway. But at some point I found myself parked in an empty lot miles away. My hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly, my gaze fixed on nothing. My mind kept replaying the events over and over, trying to process what had just happened, grasping at any hope that it wasn't real. But it was. Emily had been cheating. For months. And when I caught her, she didn't cry or try to explain. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't even act ashamed. She just stood there, irritated that I had the nerve to interrupt her night. The sound of my phone vibrating in the cup holder pulled me from my thoughts. For the briefest moment I let myself hope it was her, that maybe she had realized what she had done, that maybe she wanted to fix it. But it wasn't her. It was Mark, my best friend. Mark and I had been close since college. He was the kind of friend who would show up at 3 in the morning if you needed him, no questions asked. I had confided in him weeks ago, telling him I had a feeling something wasn't right with Emily. He told me to trust my instincts. I hadn't. And I should have. I answered. "Jake," he said, his voice sharp and urgent. "Where are you?" "Nowhere," I muttered. A pause. "Then you found out, didn't you?" I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." Silence. Then the sound of a chair scraping on his end. "Where are you?" "I'm coming to get you." I hesitated. I didn't know what I needed, what I was supposed to do next. But I knew one thing: I couldn't sit in that car alone, drowning in my thoughts, feeling like a fool for wasting years on someone who never truly cared. I gave him my location. 15 minutes later, his truck pulled up beside me. Before I even had a chance to open the door, he was already talking. "She's garbage," he said flatly. No sugarcoating, no hesitation. "Always has been." That caught me off guard. "What?" he sighed, gripping the wheel. I didn't want to say anything before, but I never trusted her. There was just something about her that always felt off. "But you loved her," so I kept quiet. "I should have warned you." I leaned back, staring out the window. I should have seen it myself. Mark's voice was firm. "She's a liar, Jake. It's who she is. She didn't even try to cover her tracks when you caught her, did she?" I let out a hollow laugh. "Nope. Yeah, because she doesn't care. She got bored. And instead of having an honest conversation with you, she just found someone else. People like her? They don't feel guilt. They just move on, leaving you to deal with the mess they made." I clenched my jaw. I wanted to argue, to defend her, to find some excuse, some reason why this wasn't what it seemed. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure if she was done with me yet. Mark kept driving. I didn't ask where we were going, and he didn't say. The low hum of the engine filled the silence between us. I stared out the window, my mind shifting between memories of the past and the image of Emily sitting on our bed, rolling her eyes like I had ruined her night. I had built a life with her. And for what? So she could laugh in my face when she got caught? I exhaled through my nose, gripping my knee to steady my shaking hands. "She's gonna text you," Mark said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "She's gonna text you. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when she does, it won't be an apology. It'll be some excuse to make herself feel better. She'll twist everything around so that somehow you're the bad guy. So that she had no choice but to do what she did." I didn't want to believe him. But I did. Because I knew Emily. She never took responsibility for anything. If something went wrong, it was always someone else's fault. And if she ever did say sorry, it wasn't because she meant it, it was because she wanted the situation to go away. A sharp buzz in my pocket made me flinch. Mark glanced at me knowingly. "Told you." I pulled out my phone. "Emily, are you serious right now?" I stared at the screen. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just 6 words that somehow made it seem like I was the one who had done something wrong. I turned the screen toward Mark. He let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Classic. You walk in on her cheating and somehow you're the bad guy. Unbelievable." I clenched my jaw, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. My first instinct was to go off on her, to say everything I was feeling, to demand answers, to make her feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. But then something clicked. She didn't care. She hadn't cared when she did it. She hadn't cared when I caught her. And she certainly didn't care now. I resisted the urge to text her back, knowing exactly how it would play out. She would twist my words, paint herself as the victim, and manipulate the situation until I ended up apologizing for even bringing it up. Not this time. Instead, I locked my phone and shoved it deep into my pocket. Mark caught the motion and smirked. Good. Let her sit with that. I exhaled slowly, staring at the counter. I don't even know what to do next. Mark shrugged. You don't have to. Not yet. Right now, just process. And if that means sitting in a bar, drinking whiskey until you can't feel your face, then that's exactly what we're going to do. For the first time that night, I felt the faintest hint of a smile. That your professional advice? Damn right it is, he said without hesitation. I had no clue what my next move would be, but one thing was certain, Emily wasn't going to make the decision for me. Mark wasn't kidding about the whiskey. We ended up at a rundown bar on the other side of town, the kind of place where the lights were too dim, the bartender had the look of someone who had seen too much, and the music was just loud enough to drown out private conversations. It was exactly what I needed. Drinking had never really been my thing, but tonight was different. Mark took charge of the orders, getting us both 2 double shots of whiskey, neat. He slid mine across the table, watching me closely like he was waiting for me to crack. But I wasn't going to, not here, not now, not in front of strangers. I downed the first glass in one go, the burn hitting me all the way down. Mark let out a low whistle. Damn. All right. Setting the empty glass on the table, I ran a hand over my face, trying to steady my thoughts. Only a few hours ago, I had been just another guy coming home from work. Now, I was sitting in a bar, reeling from the realization that my wife, no, my ex-wife, had been with someone else in our house, in our bed, laughing about it like it was nothing. Mark clinked his glass against the counter, his gaze steady. So, what's the plan? The plan. I repeated, staring at him blankly. He gestured vaguely. Yeah. What's next? Divorce? Revenge? Maybe disappearing into the woods and starting over. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I don't know, man. I haven't thought that far ahead. Mark studied me for a moment, then tilted his head. Well, I have. And I gotta ask, are you sure this was the first time? That question hit harder than the whiskey. I blinked. What? He swirled the liquid in his glass, not meeting my eyes. Are you sure this was the first time she cheated? Because from what I saw, she looked way too comfortable getting caught. Like it wasn't new to her. I wanted to argue, to insist that of course this was the first time, that Emily wouldn't do that. But then I thought back to the way she had reacted, unbothered, like she had expected it, like she had rehearsed for this moment. My stomach twisted. I shook my head, more at myself than at him. Jesus. Mark leaned in, his voice quieter now. You need to get into her phone. I rubbed my temples. Dude, no. It's over. I don't need to see more. No, you need to see everything, he countered firmly. Right now, you think she's been messing around for a few months. But what if it's been years? What if this guy isn't the only one? You don't want to be the guy walking into a courtroom thinking you know the truth, only to get blindsided. I let out a sharp breath. As much as I hated to admit it, he had a point. But how was I supposed to get into her phone? Mark must have read my thoughts because he smirked. You said she texted you, right? I nodded slowly. Then she still thinks she's in control. That means you have an opening. He leaned in. Text her back. I frowned. What? Tell her you want to talk, he said, his smirk widening. And then get the proof you need. The idea of sitting across from Emily, pretending I wanted to work things out, made my skin crawl. But the idea of walking away without knowing the full truth, that was worse. I pulled out my phone and sent her a message. Emily responded almost instantly. Oh, so now you want to talk? I could practically hear the smugness in her words, and it made my blood boil. But I forced myself to stay calm. I needed her to believe she still had me under her control. We need to figure this out. I don't want to throw everything away over one mistake. A complete lie. A humiliating, disgusting lie. But if she thought I was weak enough to forgive her, she'd lower her guard. 3 dots appeared. Then they vanished. Then they came back. I knew what was happening. She was weighing her options, deciding if she still had power over me. Finally, her reply came through. Fine. Meet me at our spot tomorrow at 7. Our spot. For years, we had gone to this small cafe every Sunday. It was where I had proposed, where some of our biggest arguments had happened, where I had told her I wanted forever with her. And now she wanted to use it for manipulation. I clenched my jaw and responded. Okay. I'll see you then. Mark was already grinning before I even looked up. Damn, man. I didn't think you had it in you. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. What now? He leaned back in his chair, looking far too pleased. Now you get your hands on her phone and we find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. The next day, I sat at our usual table at the cafe, doing my best to look like a man who still had hope. Emily arrived 5 minutes late, looking far too composed for someone who had just been caught betraying her partner. Her hair was curled to perfection, makeup flawlessly applied, and she wore a dress I hadn't seen her in for years. As she slid into the seat across from me, she removed her sunglasses with an air of nonchalance, like a celebrity dodging the paparazzi. With a smirk, she broke the silence. "Well, this is awkward." I forced out a short laugh. "Yeah." For a brief moment, she examined me as if trying to gauge my emotions. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, she leaned back. "Look, Jake, I know you're upset, but can we just be adults about this? What's done is done." She dismissed the situation with a casual wave of her hand as if she were sending back an unsatisfactory meal at a restaurant. Her words echoed in my head, no point in dragging it out. My fingers curled into fists beneath the table, but I reminded myself to focus. The plan mattered more than my anger. Taking a slow breath, I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I just don't understand," I said, letting exhaustion seep into my expression. "Why him? Why now?" She tilted her head slightly, feigning sympathy. "Almost. Jake, come on. Things haven't been good between us for a while." I fought the urge to laugh. She had never made an effort to fix anything. Instead, I shook my head. "I just need the truth. No more lies." She hesitated, her gaze flickering with uncertainty. But after a moment, she gave a small nod. "Fine. No more secrets." Reaching into her purse, she pulled out her phone. My pulse quickened as I watched her unlock the screen, scrolling through her messages. I had only a few seconds to act. Shifting in my seat, I deliberately knocked over my drink, spilling it straight onto her lap. She gasped, recoiling. "Jake, what the hell?" Jumping up, I grabbed a handful of napkins. "Crap. I'm sorry. Here, let me." Her phone lay on the table. Unlocked. In an instant, I snatched it. Emily froze, eyes widening as realization hit. "Jake." But it was too late. My fingers were already scrolling through her messages. And what I found was so much worse than I had imagined. The moment my eyes locked onto the screen, my stomach lurched. This wasn't just about one guy. This hadn't been going on for just a few months. There were multiple names, different conversations stretching back over a year. Messages filled with inside jokes, affectionate nicknames, and detailed plans, hotels, work trip excuses that lined up perfectly with her meetings with other men. My hands trembled as I scrolled faster. Emily lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. "Jake, give it back. Now." I shoved my chair back and stood up. The murmur in the cafe quieted as people turned toward us, sensing the tension. But I didn't care. I was reading words I was never meant to see. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." Not from the man I had caught in my bedroom. Someone else entirely. "Wish I was in your bed instead of his right now. He's so clueless. I don't even have to try that hard." A breath I hadn't realized I was holding left my chest. All this time, I thought she had been distant because of stress, exhaustion from work. But no, she had been laughing at me behind my back. Emily stood now, voice low and sharp. "Jake, if you don't give me my phone right now, I swear, eh." I lifted a hand, my voice eerily calm. "Be quiet." She blinked, caught off guard by my tone. For once, she wasn't the one in control. I met her gaze. "How many?" Her lips parted, then closed. She swallowed hard. "Jake?" "How many, Emily?" She let out a sharp exhale, rolling her eyes. "Why does it matter?" Something inside me cracked. A bitter laugh escaped me, hollow and cold. Emily flinched. "You know what? You're right. It doesn't matter." I tossed her phone onto the table, sending the salt shaker wobbling. "Because I'm done." Her expression darkened. "What do you mean, done?" Grabbing my jacket, I shoved my chair back into place. "It means you don't have to hide anymore. No more sneaking around. You win. I'm out." I turned to leave, but her hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "Wait." I yanked free. "Don't touch me." For the first time since I discovered the truth, Emily looked genuinely afraid. Not remorseful, not regretful, just afraid because she realized she had lost control. I walked out of the cafe. Emily didn't follow. She knew there was nothing left to say. Stepping into the cold evening air, I barely felt the chill. My heart pounded, my hands still shaking. I had spent years loving someone who didn't just betray me. She mocked me for trusting her. I needed to get away. I had barely reached my car when my phone buzzed. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. Emily. I let it ring. Then came the text. "Jake, talk to me." My jaw tightened. Oh, now she wanted to talk? Now that she realized she couldn't manipulate her way out of this? Another buzz. Don't walk away like this. I let out a bitter laugh. Like this? As if she hadn't been seeing other men for over a year? Another message followed. Come home so we can figure this out. Home. I stared at the word, a slow, sickening realization sinking in. She wasn't asking me to come back because she was sorry. She wasn't asking because she wanted to fix things. She had asked that question because she assumed she still had a hold over me. That was the moment everything became crystal clear. I knew exactly what needed to be done. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and dialed Mark. He answered immediately. Tell me you're out of there, he said, his tone urgent. I am, I murmured, unlocking my car. But I need your help. He didn't even pause. Just say the word. I took a deep breath. I'm leaving. There was a brief silence before he responded. Where to? Anywhere but here. My grip tightened around the steering wheel. After the breakup, I had quit my job without a second thought, and now I was about to get on a plane. First, I just needed to gather my things. Mark let out a low whistle. Wow, you're really doing this. Yeah. There was no repairing what had been broken, no salvaging what was left. Emily had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. All right, Mark said. I'll meet you at your place. I ended the call and drove. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Mark was already there, leaning casually against his truck. As I stepped out, he studied me carefully. You sure about this? I gave a firm nod. Yeah. Emily's car was parked in the driveway, but I barely acknowledged it. I wasn't here for another argument, nor was I interested in whatever excuse she had prepared. I was here to reclaim my life. Mark followed me inside, and there she was, Emily, standing in the living room, arms crossed, waiting for me. Jake, she started, her voice softer than I expected. Can we just? I didn't slow down. I walked right past her, heading straight to the bedroom. She blinked. No. Ignoring her, I pulled open the closet and grabbed a duffel bag. Her footsteps hurried after me. Jake, stop. Please. Let's just sit down and talk. I spun around sharply, and for the first time she flinched. My voice was calm but unwavering. There's nothing left to talk about. I saw the messages. Emily. Not just him. All of them. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. You didn't just betray me, I continued, tossing clothes into my bag. You laughed about it, called me clueless, thought I'd never figure it out. I shoved more clothes into the bag. Well, guess what? I did. Emily reached out, her fingers grazing my arm. Jake, I was stupid. Okay? It didn't mean anything. I pulled away instantly. You don't get to decide what meant something to me. For a split second, something flickered behind her eyes. Not guilt. Not remorse. Fear. It was sinking in. She realized I was really leaving. She tried one last time. You can't just walk away from everything. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I'm not the one who threw everything away. You did. Zipping up my bag, I slung it over my shoulder and walked out. Mark was already at the front door, holding it open. Emily followed, her voice rising now. Jake, be serious. Where are you even going? I stepped outside without hesitation. Anywhere but here. She stood in the doorway, stunned. It was as if she had never actually considered the possibility that I would walk away. But I did. And I didn't look back. The drive was silent. Mark followed behind in his truck, heading to his place. I had no concrete plan yet. No idea where I was going or what I would do next. But I was certain of one thing. I wasn't spending another moment in that house. Emily had sent me 7 messages in the past 10 minutes. I didn't open them. There was no need. I already knew the pattern. First, anger. Then guilt-tripping. And when that failed, feigned regret. I had wasted enough time under her control. I wasn't giving her another second. Mark's place was modest but comfortable. The second I stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief. He tossed me a beer and settled across from me on the couch. So, he said, cracking his open. What now? I exhaled. I don't know, man. He took a slow sip, watching me closely. She's gonna try to reel you back in. I know. She's gonna cry. Say she was confused. That she didn't know what she was doing. I know. Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. And when that doesn't work, she's going to get mean. I clenched my jaw. That was the part one had been bracing for. Almost on cue, my phone buzzed again. I finally glanced at the screen. Are you really doing this? Jake, I made a mistake. We can fix this. Don't be an idiot. You're throwing your life away over nothing. I exhaled sharply and tossed my phone onto the table. She's already trying to spin it. Mark let out a snort. Of course she is. She can't handle the fact that you're actually leaving. She thought she had you locked in forever. He gestured toward my phone. She's not texting you because she loves you. She's texting you because you're not playing the role she assigned you. I ran a hand over my face and nodded. He was right. Emily didn't miss me, she missed the convenience of having someone to lie to, someone to come home to after sneaking around. She missed knowing she could get away with it. But I was done playing that game. Mark stretched. So, you quit your job? I hesitated. Yeah. His lips curled into a grin. Damn. You're going full reset. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. I can't sit in that office every day pretending nothing happened. She's probably already telling our friends some twisted version of the story, making me out to be the bad guy. Mark nodded approvingly. Good. Burn it all down, start fresh. You got enough money saved up? Enough. He took another sip of his beer, then smirked. Then screw it. Let's go big. I arched an eyebrow, taken aback. What was he getting at? Leaning in, Mark's expression was firm. You're upset. You're free. And there's nothing tying you down anymore. So why stay here? Just pick a destination, book a flight, and go. I studied him in silence. The idea had been simmering in the back of my mind ever since I left that house, but hearing him say it out loud made it real, tangible. Mark continued, his voice unwavering. You could sit around and dwell on everything that happened. Or you could throw some things in a bag, get on a plane, and never let Emily's betrayal take up another second of your life. Slowly, I exhaled. For the first time, I had absolutely nothing holding me back. And just like that, I knew exactly what I had to do. 2 days later, I stood in the middle of the airport, gripping a one-way ticket. This was uncharted territory for me. I had always been the type to play it safe, to think things through, weigh every consequence, and plan ahead. But now, there was nothing left to lose. Mark had helped me pack, though I didn't need much. Just a simple duffel bag filled with essentials. My passport. My savings. A brand new phone number, because there was no part of me that ever wanted to hear from Emily again. The night before, she had tried to call from a different number. I nearly ignored it, but curiosity won out. The second I answered, she launched into full-blown damage control. Jake, please? Let's be adults and talk this through. I remained silent, letting her speak. She took that as encouragement. I know I hurt you. I made a mistake. But are you really willing to throw away everything we built over this? Come on, you're not perfect either. I exhaled, shaking my head. There it was, the attempt to shift blame. She had lied. She had betrayed me. And yet, somehow, she expected me to share the guilt. Keeping my voice steady, I asked, how many? Silence. Then, in a small voice, Jake. I pressed again. How? Many. Another pause. Then finally, I don't know. I closed my eyes. That was all I needed to hear. Without another word, I hung up, blocked her number, and that was it, the last time I would ever hear her voice. Now, standing in the airport, I felt something unfamiliar but exhilarating. Weightless. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Mark. I still think you should have let me slash her tires. A smirk tugged at my lips as I typed back. Not worth the effort. Where you flying to? I exhaled, glancing at the departures board. I hadn't overanalyzed this decision. Hadn't mapped anything out. I had simply chosen a place and bought the ticket. Spain. Mark's reply was instant. Hell yes. Send me a pic of the first margarita you drank. The boarding announcement echoed overhead. My flight was ready. I grabbed my bag, took one last look at the life I was leaving behind, and then turned toward the future waiting ahead. Emily had tried to break me. She had expected me to come crawling back. She thought she could rewrite the story. She was wrong. I didn't belong to her anymore. I belonged to me.